Benjamin are obsessed with bullying. They are obsessed with saying who is a buller and who ain't a buller. And their anger, because so many of them are angry, and I get the anger. I get the anger. I get that there are no opportunities for young men. I get that you weren't showing the love that every human being should have been shown as you grew up. I mean, I myself am recently just coming to terms with how I was parented and the negative effects that it had on me, right? But I guess this video is just coming from me being online and seeing how many homophobic posts there are, and then how many people in the comments are laughing and agreeing with the posts. Now, I know that this comes from a place of ignorance. Really, it does. There's no way around it. But there's some other reasons, right? I think that, like Shakespeare said, methinks the lady doth protest too much, which is basically when somebody insists too much on something, it's usually the very opposite thing that is the issue, right? So when people are obsessed with who's a buller and angry at the bullers, usually, I wouldn't say usually, but sometimes they've got unresolved issues. It could be internalized homophobia, which is they hate themselves for who they are. Nobody has chosen their sexuality. Think about when you decided you were going to like what you like. You didn't choose it. Just like we don't choose to digest with food, just like we don't choose to taste things, our body just decides certain things for us. And this is just one of the things that is decided. I mean, thousands of species of animals are known to be homosexual. Notoriously, rams, black-bellied sheep are known to be homosexual. I remember growing up and seeing bulls mounting bulls. I mean, this is just a fact of nature. Nature throws up different combinations to see what will work best in different situations. And so nature don't really give a fuck about human morality. That's the truth. And if you know the history of the criminalization of homosexuality, this is a colonizer thing. One of the things that the colonizers has enforced on us. But I just think it's interesting because when I go online and I see all of these comments against gay people, I specifically from the Caribbean, I think it's interesting because I guess the bots don't know the slurs, the Caribbean slurs, and so they don't recognize it. And so it's an interesting thing as well because people who are members of the LGBTQ community are usually afraid, and I believe there's good reason to be afraid because ignorant people will do ignorant things, and you don't want to lose your life because somebody's stupid, right? And so they don't speak up. But the result of this is that we, and I say we because I'm a member of that community, we end up having to live in a very hostile environment, man. A very hostile environment. My thing is, though, that the irony of it is that homophobia is like a homosocial glue. And what do I mean by that? Men use homophobia to bond with each other, you know? Because if you don't like buller men and your buddies don't like buller men, then you got that in common. So you get to be buddies together hating the buller men, right? Of course, they don't care as much about the lesbians. And I could get into how stupid this whole thing is. I mean, I've watched porn and straight porn has in just as much anal sex. So is it the anal sex that is problematic? Or is it a man being with a man that's problematic, you know? But I know that the people who are posting these things aren't thinking people. These are just people repeating what they've heard. I mean, I've heard little children calling each other bullers, right? And buller, interestingly enough, doesn't even have to do with sexuality. It is just a word that people know to use to get others to fall in line. If you want somebody to behave, you can say, wait, you use a buller. And immediately, out of fear, because this is the worst thing you could be called, they're going to want to please you, usually a man. So this is why I think it's funny, right? Because homophobia has a lot to do with men pleasing men. You want to fit into the group, you're gonna be homophobic, you're gonna hate the bullers, right? When it's all ridiculous, because I have been fortunate enough to live in places where I've met people who just have a more open mind about differences because they've traveled the world, and when you've traveled, you're kind of forced to accept differences because you realize that different cultures are different and the way they do things are different. And I've met lots of men who have girlfriends who are extremely comfortable with other people being homosexual because it is none of their business. Like, why does it upset you so much what a man is doing in the privacy of his bedroom? Like is that is a curious thing, isn't it? Like, that is suspicious. That's the word that I was going to look for. So I just wanted to say this because it's exhausting, man. It's exhausting. And I get that you're angry, but I ain't do these things that got you so angry. I ain't do none of these things to you that got you so angry. You know, I ain't the body that used to beat you, or I ain't the body that ain't give you the opportunities that you wanted in order to succeed in life. And so I wish that you could understand that. Another thing is that you ain't got what you want. I just speak three languages. You ready to speak to me in French? You ready to speak to me in Portuguese and in Spanish? Because this level I on. So if I happen to look in your direction, don't get vexed, because I am not looking for nobody who only know how to smoke weed all day, drink Guinnesses and Rule Boys all day, and whilst you're doing exactly being angry, walking around with a screw face for no reason. Like, life is meant to be enjoyed.